clubs after school. So that's the big vision that we hope to contribute to and pursue. So we certainly welcome and invite you to learn more about that, our traveling exhibits. This past year has been more difficult to get together in person for obvious reasons. I was really pleased with the creativity of Morgan and the team here to adapt some of our programs to a compelling online format. And I'll turn it over to Morgan to talk through some of those. I'm here to be available in the chat as well while we're going, but I'll come back for discussion later on. Over to you, please, Morgan.
Thanks, Doyle. Before diving in, I wanted to just comment too. I know that we've got a variety of people here with us today. And so if you are not currently a classroom teacher anymore or have never been a classroom teacher, we all know teachers. We're all connected to schools in some way. And so I would just encourage you to take these resources to someone that you know who could use them in their classroom. And then also, other community-like centers as well. We all have circles of influence. And so no matter what background you're joining from, we're glad you're here and you have a place to play. So we would love to connect with you. So Doyle was talking about our traveling exhibits, so I will start there. We like to refer to them as, really the core of what we do. For a little bit of context there, Doyle talked about how these have been happening all over the world for decades now, and it really all goes back to Otto Frank. After the war was over and he read his daughter's diary, he was struck by how wise and mature she was, and the fact that she had very valid ideas and opinions on adult topics, right? And we're talking about a time when children were expected to be seen and not heard, and so they weren't invited in to these conversations. Well, Otto reads his daughter's diary and realizes there was no reason that she could not have been a part of these conversations. And so he was committed to making sure that the work that was carried out in the name of his daughter centered young people. And so that's what we do. So the exhibit Doyle described and the peer education process aims to put young people's voice at the center of it and really empower them to carry the conversation forward, because we all know that that's where the future is. As cheesy as it sounds, and as much as we all say it and hear it, it is true. And so we have to be equipping them and not just lecturing at them. And so that said, I wanted to show you quickly a photo of one of our traveling exhibit setup. This was just a couple of weeks ago down in what we call the Low Country of South Carolina, just above Georgia. I was there just a couple of weeks ago. You can see the masks, so you know that it is recent. And this was actually the first time that I was able to be back in a school in 18 months. So we are all monitoring and adjusting for COVID, being as safe as we can. But thankfully, this program came to fruition and that exhibit is still there right now. And so you see here a student who is practicing giving a tour. So you see what our exhibits look like here, the photos, some text, but primarily photos. And we really take a micro macro view through this exhibit. So the panels, and you can actually see this here. You'll see the panel on the far left is talking about the Frank family. You see family photos there. And then the middle panel here, you see that it's giving more context to what was happening in Germany, in the Netherlands, in the world around the Frank family. And so it alternates in that way. And so it gives all audiences a chance to come away with a good understanding of the whole story and what was happening here. So this program, it's really just going to depend on, at this moment, every school is different. And so we know that this is something that we can plan out as much as a year in advance. And so if this is something that sounds interesting to you, please reach out. We love getting in person with students. And so we've really missed being able to do this over the past couple of years. And so that is what an exhibit looks like. That's what our traveling exhibit looks like. Like Doyle said, it can fit in the back of a car. So it's really portable, but when it goes up, it is very impressive, very clean and professional. So that is what that looks like. Now, that said, just like all of you, we have had to monitor and adjust for developing virtual programs over the past year and a half. And so what that means is that while we haven't been able to be in person with students, we have been able to develop some really engaging and exciting new programs. And so this isn't something that's going to go away. I think we've all realized that this is just something that's going to complement all of the in-person programming that is being done. And in situations like this, no matter what state you're in, it's very easy for us to partner in this way. So one of the biggest areas that we've been developing is theater. And so we have 2 theater performances that can be delivered virtually. There's also in-person delivery as well, if that's something that you're interested in. But I do want to show you a couple of previews, some trailers for these theater performances. So the first one that I will show you is called Conversations with Anne. So this is a one-woman show. The whole program lasts about 1 hour, and the entire script is text from the diary. So students are able to get a glimpse into the world of Anne. This is intended for younger audiences, so late elementary, early middle school. And I will show that to you now. Doyle, let me know if you can't see or hear. Just kidding, that's the wrong one. Let me get the other one. Here we go. And one more time. You always think you have it just right until someone else is
Morgan,
watching.
While you're looking for that, there is a question that just came in. So
Sure.
I just want to tell you the question so you can address it a little later on. And it's, can you talk about speakers? And do you have people that talk to students and connect with them, stories like Doyle's? So just keep that in the back of your mind as a question for after you show the video, but I just want to make sure we didn't lose it because it was in the chat.
Thank you for pointing that out. I think we're good to go here. Let's see. And we'll come back to that for sure. Thank you. Here we go.
June 12th, 1942. I hope I will be able to confide everything to you, as I have never been able to confide in anyone. I don't want to jot down the facts in this diary the way most people would do, but I want the diary to be my friend. And I'm going to call this friend Kitty.
De nazi's nemen er geen genoegen mee.
The evacuation of London and other large towns continued today, and reports from all over the country show.
Die einzige Macht und alleinige Macht in Deutschland.
Dearest Kitty, dearest Kitty, dearest Kitty. So much has happened. It's as if the whole world had suddenly turned upside down. Terrible things are happening outside. I see the world being slowly transformed into a wilderness. I feel the suffering of millions. All we can do is wait. And many are waiting for death. Yours, Anne.
Okay. So I see that Doyle is responding to some of the questions in the chat. Doyle, you have to change who you're typing to everyone. The default is only to the host and panelists. So if you can just send those messages again and make sure it's to everyone.
Will do. Thanks for that clarification.
Sure. So what you just saw was the trailer for Conversations with Anne. And when delivered virtually, we could really make that a powerful experience. And so students watch this recording, and then the actor comes in live in character. And she is able to actually give a behind the scenes tour of the hiding space itself. And so via screen share, she is able to show students what it looked like to be in hiding when the space was furnished. I'll actually be able to show you what that looks like in a little bit. And after that, she's able to answer the students' questions. So depending on what the group size is, we try to make our programs as interactive as possible. So sometimes that's going to look like Q&A like we have here. Sometimes it's chat. Sometimes it's by unmuting and asking the question out loud. But we want to invite students to engage with the actress. And so she's able to answer questions like, what was it like when you were in hiding? How were you feeling? What were you experiencing? And so that's one reason that this is geared towards a younger audience, because she stays in character. And so older students aren't going to buy into that quite as much, but it really is a very special experience for them to have all of those components, to see the theater production, to get the behind the scenes tour, and then to have time to ask questions. There's also an educator that's a part of that program. So after Anne answers questions in person, there's an educator who would come on and be able to answer questions that Anne cannot answer, right? Because Anne doesn't know what happens to her after a certain point. And so we're able to answer big picture questions. So that is one of our theater performances that works really well with younger students, like I said. And so now I want to show you our other theater performance. And this one is called Letters from Anne and Martin, and is intended for a bit older audience. It can be used with adult audiences, but when we think about classrooms and schools, middle and high school is really going to be the sweet spot, older middle school and high school. So let's try this one here. Sorry, y'all, we've got a little bit of mislabeling happening here. So it's taking me a second longer than I would like. Okay, let's try this again. And here we go.
Men are killing each other. De nazi's nemen er geen genoegen mee. Victims are falling under their execution.
Kompromisslos, die einzige Macht und alleinige Macht in Deutschland.
You are humiliated day in and day out.
It's that bad in Holland. What must it be like in those faraway and uncivilized places the Germans are sending them? We assume that most of them are being murdered.
Vicious mobs lynch your mothers and fathers at will and drown your sisters and brothers at whim. Freedom is never voluntarily given up by the oppressor, but it must be demanded by the oppressed.
Be brave. Let's remember our duty and perform it without complaint. There will be a way out. Yours. Anna M. Frank.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay. Now, while I'm thinking about it, I wanted to go ahead and drop our general email address in the chat for all of you in case some of you have to dip out early before we're able to share that. So please take that down and reach out to us. But so this performance is very special. Like you saw, the entire script is being taken directly from the text referenced, right? So letters from Birmingham jail, and then also the diary. And when overlapped is incredibly powerful to see the themes. We know that Anne and Dr. King were born in the same year. And so often we think of this history as being completely separate, different parts of the world, different experiences. And while that is true, it's also a lot closer than we realize, both in time and also in experiences when we think about isolation and we think about confinement. And so with this performance, there's also a Q&A time at the end. The actors are not in character. And so they're answering questions about what it's like to portray these people and their journey as artists in doing that, and also some about the history and the times as well. So I see we've got some good questions and chat coming in.
Yes.
Some of you have seen these before. Sorry, did I cut you off?
And so Tara, there's also in the Q&A a question about the dramatization of Anne Frank. And is it available for students to watch as a virtual tour, or is it only available via a museum tour as a performance?
Sorry, can you say the question one more time?
Sure. The dramatization of Anne Frank, I think that was the first video you showed. Is that only available as a virtual tour, or is it available as a virtual tour, or is it only available as a museum tour with a performance?
Gotcha. So both of these theater productions can be done live.
Great.
Does that answer the question?
They could be done
used
virtually.
to always
In other words,
be
they could be done virtually to a classroom via Zoom.
Yes, sorry. So they can be done in person. That's what I meant by live, but that's confusing now when we think about live and being recorded. So they can be done in person, and then they can also be done via Zoom, correct?
Thank you. And Tara, if that doesn't answer your question, please let me know and we'll answer it. We'll get it asked a different way.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tara. Okay, so those are our theater programs. Now, I mentioned earlier the virtual reality experience, seeing The Hiding Place. We actually also offer that as a standalone experience and program. So I'd love to give you a quick behind the scenes look. Now, this program also lasts 1 hour. Sometimes it goes a little bit over because we get lots of great questions, and whenever we can accommodate, we're happy to, but we do our very best to fit all of these programs into a typical class period. And so we know for some people that's going to be a block of 90 or 75 minutes, but for some it can even be 50 minutes. And so we'll do what we need to do to make these programs fit into your class period so that it's as easy on your end as possible, because we know the logistics are often the hardest part. So we're willing to tailor and do what we need to do to make it fit. So don't worry about that part. Now, the VR tour, this technology was developed by the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam, and is really special because it gives a really unique view. So I will go ahead and pull this up now. So here you can see the famous bookcase, and we know what is behind the bookcase. Now, through this program, we were able to show students what this space looked like when Anne was in hiding. Everyone who gives these tours has spent time in person at the Anne Frank House working there. And so we're able to give kind of behind the scenes narratives and really make this a special experience. This is also really great for students who may have read the diary. Oftentimes, it'll be translated to attic. We'll hear that Anne hid in an attic. That's what I thought for a long time growing up. because the translation is just slightly off, right? We know that a better translation is the word annex because it's the house behind, but that can still be really confusing for a lot of students and adults alike. So here we're able to really give students an understanding of where they were in hiding, what it looked like, the physical building. The hiding place was in the back here, Otto's office space, and his company operated out front and then back underneath as well. So I'll show you the first furnished room here. So this is the bedroom of Otto and Edith Frank, Anne's parents, and then eventually Anne's sister also moved in and joined them in this room. Now, one of the reasons that this is a unique view is because when you go to the Anne Frank house today in Amsterdam, it is not furnished, right? And so that's one reason that this is a really unique program, even for people who have been many times and feel like they're very familiar with the place and with the story. So like I said, we try to make this as interactive as possible. So we'll be taking questions throughout. Again, the method just depends on the size of the group and what makes sense. We also like to have meaningful conversation here the best that we can. I will show you this room where we're able to do that more. So this is the kitchen space. And so in this space, we're able to talk with students about what did it take to have 8 people in hiding here for over 2 years, right? Of course, we know they needed food, they needed clothing. How did they get that, right? And so we're able to talk about the people who made that happen, the risks that they took, the sacrifices that they made. And then just like Doyle was saying, you know, part of the reason that we do all of this is trying to inspire students to think about ways they can help. What are areas that they have that they can reach out and do the right thing, speak up, help someone out. And so this tour gives us the opportunity to have that conversation and talk about why people made the choices they did in the time. And then why do we think we make the choices that we make? Really big conversations. And the goal here is really to take a lot of what we do during our guide trainings in person and bring some of that out in these virtual tours, right? So that it's more than just looking at a space, that it's really making us think deeply. And that's a theme that we talk about in our in-person guide trainings as well, right? We have activities that revolve around helping, being an upstander. What does that look like? And so even in the virtual tour, we try to bring those themes in for students. All right. I don't see any specific questions about that. So I will move on until I am told otherwise. Looks like there's some good stuff happening in the chat here. Okay. So the other piece that we wanted to share with you are workshops that we're able to deliver virtually. There's also some in-person offerings there, but a lot of our leaders of these are out of New York. And so they have been so creative, just like all educators, to find ways to get these programs into schools all over the country. And so some of those that we wanted to share with you, one of those is called Bystander to Ally, which again lines up with what we were just talking about. And so that can be done in a one-time experience. And so we are able to bring in what we call our teaching artists who have lots of experience working with students all over the country and are able to have these conversations, do these activities about what it looked like historically, and then what does that look like for us today. And we know that it's difficult and it's tricky to apply these kinds of lessons to contemporary settings, even though it shouldn't be, we know that it can be. And so we're trying to equip students to do that responsibly and give them the tools to be critical and also be the person who's going to stand up in those situations like we see historically and unfortunately around us as well. And then another one that could not be more relevant is called Art and Propaganda. And so that one encourages students to, one, ask the question, what is propaganda? It's not something that is only a historical topic. We see it all around us today, and it could not be more relevant when we think about media literacy and the importance of students being able to look at messages they are receiving today, very often online, but also still in print all around us. And asking questions like, what is the message being sent? Who is the sender here? Is there something they're trying to get me to believe? What is that? Why? What aim is there? Both, again, looking at that historically, and then also saying, what does it look like for us today? And how can we be really diligent to be critical of what we're taking? And we know that with our young people, that is happening more than ever before. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but we know that they are taking in so much more than older generations could have imagined. And so this is one way that we're really able to equip them to be diligent and be wise with that information. So that is my really big summary of a lot of different programs. And so I want to do two things. One, invite Doyle back to fill in any gaps that he sees that I may have missed that are important. And two, give more time. I know that there's been some good questions and conversations happening in the chat, but that was just an overview of a lot of stuff. So if you want more details about any of that, we are more than happy to share it. So please feel free to bring that on.
Hey, thanks a lot, Morgan. That was terrific, and some fascinating conversation happening in the chat. Would love to switch over and be able to see you all face to face. Lori's shared that her mother was in Bergen-Belsen at the same time as Anne Frank, survived and still well and speaks to kids. That's amazing and wonderful. We've got several friendly teachers across Michigan. You may know some of them. One of our closest colleagues there is Corey Harbaugh, John Ferris, of course, maybe some others, Robert Lurie, and then Tara, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I got it. I know I got it wrong at least once, in Zion, Illinois. Tremendous. And Michael, thank you for sharing that resource on the animated material there at Eyewitness. I hadn't seen that before. He was always such a great advocate for Holocaust education. And in fact, Ed Asner was the first person to receive the Anne Frank Center's Human Rights Award in 1986. So I just found those old papers in the archive from honoring him. Gosh, what's that, 35 years ago now? Remarkable contributions he made over the years. So thank you for that. If you'd like to have any more conversation discussions, I would be happy to do that. I see some of you were looking for speakers, and that can be a variety of possibilities, but I'd love to ask Anne or Isabella about your father and whether he's available to do some speaking online, as well as all the great in-person stuff he's done. That's something we need to include for every group who comes to speak to us, I think.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, as Anne introduced us earlier today, our father is a survivor and is still with us today, thank God. So when we created the foundation 2 years ago, we did this to honor him, not to memorialize him. And he is very active and in part of the foundation. So he does go out and he speaks. Obviously, before we were all in quarantine and lockdown, we did it all in person, and then turned very actively to Zoom or Google Meets. So if anyone is interested, you can reach out to us and arrange for Mark to come into your classrooms virtually. Or if you're local, then we are starting to go in person back into the classroom, so long everyone is masked up and stuff. So we can definitely make an arrangements for Mark to come into your classroom and speak and tell of his story. We are in New Jersey.
Yes, exactly. We are in New Jersey.
We are in New Jersey. So, and our father is in New Jersey as well. So if you're in the New York, New Jersey area, we can definitely make arrangements for coming in person.
We've even gone up to Connecticut.
or even up to Connecticut. Yeah, everything, you know, within, you know, we could figure that out. And then, or even into Pennsylvania to some degree, depending on where in Pennsylvania, if it's not too far west.
Right.
I had to think of my geography for a second. But yeah, so we can make arrangements, we can make it work as a second generation. If my father can't do it, Ann and I also go into the classroom and speak as second generation, which gives another perspective on that as well. So
I just have one question, if I may, Doyle.
Sure.
I don't know, maybe I missed it. Can you just go over the costs with some of these programs that you presented today, just so that the teachers and educators have an idea? Are all of them have a cost? Are there any that are not with a cost, or how can they find that out?
That's right. So starting from the theater programs, because that involves actors and rehearsals and whatnot, those programs tend to be $1,000. We know that some of the people on this call are looking for one classroom, so we're able to make adjustments and address local needs. The theater performances in person often fill an auditorium, so we've been fortunate to be able to reach an entire school at one time. So if you'd like to team up with others, we can make things work. But our purpose is to bring opportunities to schools. So get in touch and we'll find ways to make things work. If we're working with a single classroom teacher, you know, other things can be possible. The traveling exhibits are very affordable, I'd say, but it does involve sometimes having to ship state to state. So those often get to be a little more with shipping. But if you'll be in touch, we often know teachers in the vicinity, other schools, classrooms, places we could team up with to help divide up costs and make that possible. So happy to address that too. The virtual tours, Morgan, has that been coming in at a certain amount lately?
Similar format to what you were saying with theater, Doyle. It really depends. We try to meet the teachers where they are, because we know sometimes we've got 20 kids in a room, and so we try to be as accommodating as possible.
That's right. So when we did a theater performance for North Carolina, you saw that's going to be streamed across the state. So that's one price bracket for that. Other things that are like a school-wide can be $1,000. We like the idea of being able to do $1 per child. So if we reach a whole school, 1,000 is a nice place to be. But if it's, you know, a grade level and there's, you know, 300-400 kids, we work with that too.
One of the questions that just came in was from Stephen. I teach 3 Holocaust classes. Is that too many classes for one day for a speaker and or the virtual tour?
The virtual tour, we can repeat and do that. So we can make that work. For a speaker, you know, there can be an emotional toll to sharing a story, certainly for survivors. So doing that 3 times can be difficult. One approach we use with 2 of the survivors we have speak is to share a 20-minute video that goes through specific aspects of their story and then shift over into live Q&A. And in that situation, we probably could arrange 3 conversations with a survivor in a day. So we find ways to make things work. That's what we're here for. So if you want to reach out, have a conversation with Morgan, we'll find a format and an arrangement that will be suitable.
And I do think also it depends on the survivors. You know, some survivors can handle it, you know, over and over again, and another survivor, it is very emotional, and it is one time it can be consuming for them. So I think it depends on the situation. It depends on the survivor that's going to be actually coming in and speaking, and you can make that arrangement, and we can, you know, Anne Frank or Center or through us, you know, to figure out the logistics of it can be figured out depending on who and what the situation is.
That's right. I would especially endorse, you should see the letters that Mark Schoenwetter receives from all the students he touches. So, you know, most survivors are suitable for a mature high school audience, But Mark Schoenwetter and our speaker, Peter Konstam, who knew Anne Frank, lived in the same apartment complex. These are folks who are very effective with middle school levels as well. And you really obviously want those speakers to be vetted very well, just because you don't know what you're getting into. We have another wonderful speaker, Evie Blakey, but some of her experiences, have me leaning towards preferring high school for her stories.
There's a question here on, oh, you got it, Morgan answered it. So Tara, the answer is there, how to reserve a virtual performance of Anne Frank and Martin for the middle school students.
Wonderful.
So Morgan gave her email right in the chat. And that other email you gave earlier is another way to reach both you and Doyle, right?
That's right. And I would add, for our North Carolina colleague, Vicki, great to have you here. We're down in Columbia, and that's where we've just opened up a new museum site and permanent exhibition as the official partner of the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam. We're really thrilled with it. So if you get a chance to come visit sometime, please get in touch. We'd love to share it. We were flattered to be featured recently in the Washington Post and Smithsonian Magazine. So if you'd like to have a look there, you can see some recent coverage of us. In Michigan, we just had our exhibit, and I didn't specify this about the traveling exhibits, how our reading and writing exhibit is really so perfectly pitched to late elementary, middle school. That's currently at Tamarack, which I think it's an hour from Battle Creek in the center of the state. So if that's in range and of interest, that's an exhibit that's currently in Michigan. Okay, super. Hey, appreciate your time today. Hope we get to meet you all down the road.
Yeah. And Isabella is putting into the chat the web page. It has a link to our application.
And just I have one more thing to put in here before we go. And I want to talk about it for a second. Just give me 1 second.
I could put it in, Isabella.
I got it. I want to just type in Journey for the Living. So sorry about that. I want to say thank you so much to the Anne Frank House Center for Mutual Respect for going over all these amazing programs. Doyle and Morgan, you always cease to amaze us. And you're just, I'm so happy that we connected and have made friendships and are able to collaborate together, because it's just really spectacular. And to all the teachers that joined today, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy days. I also want to say thank you to Wells Fargo advisors for sponsoring our event, as well as the Nancy and Andrew Wayne family for the teacher webinar series. I want to give you a little bit more. As we said, we do offer grants to be able to help you pay for these wonderful programs that they will work with you to figure out the pricing on, and talk to Doyle, talk to Morgan, get the pricing. So when you do submit your grants, we need to have that detail of what you're asking for as far as dollars go. Maximum that you can ask for that we will give is $1,000 per grant. And if you ask for more than 1,000, we won't even look at the application. So just consider that. Also, I put out in the chat something called Journey for the Living. This is a program, a challenge that we have created for this fall, and it's going to take place in the month of November. And the challenge is to basically walk in Mark's footsteps. Take the challenge of walking 15 miles during the month of November, and you can create a team, and people can sponsor and support your team. And basically the 15 miles is representative of what Mark, our father, who at the age of 6, along with his younger sister and mother, walked 15 miles from his hometown to a ghetto where they thought they would be safer. So we are coming up with this fitness challenge. It's a great thing for you to do with your school to create. Maybe it's free to register, and it could be a fundraiser that you're teaching the kids, getting them into fitness, and it's teaching them to understand. They could do it over 1 month, 15 miles, but really, if you think about a 6-year-old doing it in 1 day, 15 miles, the perspective that it puts into your mind. So It's a great way to incorporate fitness and also a learning experience of understanding what took place. So that you could sign up, Journey for the Living, and learn more about it. So it's a great
And I want to
opportunity.
make sure that we're clear. Isabella mentioned it's free to participate. So
Right.
you don't have to fundraise for it. As a teacher, we think and we want to encourage you to get your classes to take the journey together and really understand and put it in your mind what it meant to do this. And so don't worry about the fundraising aspect for the kids' perspective. It's more about, we want to make sure that that awareness is really brought to light.
And it's a great way to kind of tie in all the learning experiences, and then, you know, getting a speaker, getting a virtual tour of the Anne Frank house, and then taking this fitness challenge. It kind of just ties it in and allows the kids to have a great firsthand, hopefully never experience, but perspective of what 15 miles and walking can be like. So it's just a thought to do. I have to run and pick up my daughter from practice. Thank you so much for joining us. I totally understand that. I'm there constantly.
And yes, Tara.
Yes, the info is on our website as well as the Journey for the Living website. So if you want to just go to mshefoundation.org, all the information is there as well. So I think we've gotten everything that, all of your questions. If there's anything else, you know, you could always email us, and we'd be more than happy to connect and help you guys out.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
everybody.
Appreciate
And don't
it.
forget, our next webinar is in October. Register if you haven't yet for that one, October 20th at 5 p.m. We will be hosting another webinar with some more great resources.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And don't close out.